Hey everybody, what's going on? Been sitting here getting ready for quite a few artistic endeavors lately, some art exhibits coming up. So my studio, as you can see right now, is a bomb zone, but of course it doesn't look like this all the time, but I'm just this way I work sometimes when I have multiple projects going on. But today I just felt a little like I need to take a break and step back and have some fun just painting something for myself. So we're going to do some finger painting today. Okay, so what we're going to do today is a technique. I was watching a video on a painter, and I've been wanting to try this for a while, so it was fun seeing it in action. This painter was basically applying paint with their hand, rubbing it all over the canvas, and of course we're going to be wearing gloves for that today, but it was a really cool effect. The layering you can get and that sort of thing. Of course, this particular demo is going to be wet and wet, and just for something to follow and try to mimic something I might see in plein air, I'm going to work from this little oil sketch that I did a few years ago and use that as a reference. Let's see what we can get into. Okay, I'm just using some latex gloves I had laid around in the garage. We obviously don't want those oil paints on our hands and absorbing into our skin. And you want to watch out for that. So now what I'm going to experiment with is first dampening the surface to get it a little bit wet for accepting smearing paint around. And for this experiment, because I don't want to just use turpentine the whole time for this, I'm going to mix in some liquid impasto gel into my paint to get it a little more fluid. So every now and then I like to have this play date, I call it. I think it's important to break out of our usual operation that we do and experiment with things. So I'm going to be using white, black, ultramarine blue, some cad yellow, and some burnt sienna. I can see me doing my urban paintings, maybe drawing out the structure and putting that in place with a line drawing done in paint. Draw it out and then reinforce those paint lines and let that dry. And then that's my map, and I can do any kind of random abstraction I want over that drawing. And if I don't like a part, I can wipe down to the original drawing. Just got my little bit of liquid impasto there. Pre-mixing with some white a little bit, get a little fluid. And I want to get just a little bit of tone. A little bit of burnt sienna, the ultramarine blue. Just get a color that's not white, a little bit of gray. And see what happens here. Wow, that's interesting. And she was kind of really, she had parts of her painting were dry, of course, but she was really kind of smearing it around. And I got a little bit of that impasto gel on mixed into the paint. I'm just getting some random marks for right now, just to get a tone on there. Now I'm going to the side of my mixture, I'm starting to mix another mixture. So if I want to, I don't want to sully that, I may need some more of that, but I'm stealing some of it and mixing it into the sienna, touching a little bit of blue, just getting some areas, a little bit of that impasto gel in there, sienna. See how I'm doing that? I got piles going on. So, and what's interesting, you have no control over these marks really. I mean, you kind of do and kind of don't. And that's the fun of it. So, I'm just making some marks here. And you can always buff it out if you don't like it. And I think this will loosen you up too, to sometimes not be so rigid with your draftsmanship. I think the randomness of this is what the whole point of the exercise is. So you can see I'm readjusting things, and I'm painting. My canvas is primed with an oil ground. I like how the paint glides on that. Sometimes if you're using the acrylic gesso, it can be quite absorbent. So then we got some A-bills there. And you can't really, you can sort of maybe get some of the paint off. And you know, you can get some paint on here and then manipulate it with other tools. Think about, I may not use any of this in my later paintings after this, but what if I find one part that's an interesting idea and I can apply that to my normal way of working? You know, you got to think like that. I'm going to mix up some just with those piles. Now mixing, let me show you, the sienna with the ultramarine blue. It's just you get random marks that are really almost more telling for the subject in terms of its history and use and that sort of thing than you could ever get with, you know, the brushwork you'd have to do. Not that it can't be done, but this is pretty much, so I call it educated randomness. So you can see it. It's like it gives the painting some meat, for lack of a better description. You feel some life in it, and I'm really liking that. And you can kind of simulate the vertical barn board. You don't need to leave it. You don't need to do that. It's just, this is your opportunity to play around. You can wipe this whole thing out if you wanted to. Now just use whatever scrap of canvas you have, tape it to a wall or board, whatever. Just getting some darker points of interest there. I just dab in, add it to my pile, dab in, add it to my pile, and so on. And I like that it's not over mixed and you get individual. And I'm going to actually make the, as you can see in my original sort of little oil study, this back barn is darker than the foreground barn. So I'm going to get that in there. And as you keep building up these layers, and especially thin like this, and the impasto gel should set up kind of quick depending on your humidity and things of that nature. But the paint is not super gobby thick, but it's dense. You might be able to go over this in a day or two. Now I'm doing straight white, kind of down in here. It's going to intermix with some of what I've already got there, and the residue that's left on the glove, of course. But you can just keep, rather than keep picking up some of that residue, you can just put more white paint on your. Now I'm going to ultramarine blue into that white pile. Let me show you. Dab a little ultramarine blue into this. You want it, it's going to be the shadow. And we can always, if we think it's too bright, we can stick our finger into this a tad, like, and dull it down just a hint. Okay. Let me see how this works for the shadow on in the snow, because the light's coming kind of from behind. Oh yeah, look at that. Pretty sweet. Okay. You don't really have any control. I'm actually amazed how controlled I can get, considering it's this. I mean, look at this. How am I gonna? I'm just doing the best I can. And sometimes, you know, when you're drawing things in perspective, don't be afraid. It can still look right, even if you skew the perspective and make it more dramatic. It depends on, what your message is in your painting. There's only if you're working realistically, there's only so far you can do that, but you can bend the rules a tad. You'll know when you've done it too much and it looks a little odd. Then you need to try to keep more to the original vanishing lines. I don't know if you can see a little more detail. I've zoomed in just a little bit, but there's a lot of activity going on in the paint, and I'm kind of really liking it a lot. Now I'm going to zoom back out and continue on. This is turning out to be pretty interesting. Because what happens is you don't get clean lines. You can clean those up, but what I'm noticing here, I'm hoping the camera is picking it up, there's like a vibration edge. There's no super clean edge, so it seems to radiate with energy. It's kind of cool. All right, I'm going to intensify the darks of the barn a little more. I'm going to have to make a little richer mixture than I originally did to really beef up what's already there. Okay. Again, I'm not going back and forth too much. I'm kind of with a little bit of heavy pressure, just wiping out a little excess where I know I want to darken up a bit. Try not to, use a variety of strokes a little bit. Try not to get a uniform look. And if you want to connect just a bit, just a hint in different parts. Maybe a little straight sienna over here, just a hint. Just to bring that color over. Okay, that's looking pretty cool. Now I'm going to pause, and I'm going to, well, first I'm going to work on the sky a little more with my fingers. Then I'm going to pull out some tools like some palette knives, see what I can get into for shaping windows and that sort of thing. Just trying different mark making. Rather than keep using my fingertip, I want to see what it does. Because this is a play date. Even when you're going to make the landscape low, like right in there. Get some of that blue around the hay bales, because I want to then set off with rim lighting. Try not to be so wanting to smash down your process of marks, your proof of process making, or I'm finding as I get older in my paintings, I want to have more of the process showing. I like paintings that have some scratchiness and some look like that. You think of Jackson Pollock, de Kooning, Richard Diebenkorn, I mean, on and on. So back into the blue intensity, and the barns are casting long shadows. Get the shadow of this snow. Could have even gone a little intenser with the blue, because I've already put the white there. I kind of got ahead of myself. Whoops. Happens. What are you going to do? So, just get a feel. There. Dip into your turps. A little bit of your dark to reestablish the hay bales. And I think I'm ready to take these gloves off, and we'll see how the rest goes with shaping with a brush I really want to try to avoid a super finished, high-end edges and all that stuff. I don't know. We'll see where it goes. It's an experiment. Draw it out with the tip of your palette knife first a little bit, but again, just try to maintain the freeness that we had with the, what do you call it, gloves. And just knock in some windows, and I'm going to try on one of these buildings because you only have so much control with the palette knife, but if you get a shape that's a little odd, you can always cut around with the bigger shape around it, which is the barn walls, of course. And try to go a little light at first. Don't worry about just getting a dark blob. Maybe see how it interacts with the layers there before. Maybe you have it too dark, like I had a little too dark, and so it's seen pasted on, but as it's lightly mixing with what's already there, I can clean up those shapes. I do want a little smaller square door here. You can always add more lightness, but don't get it too light too fast, because then trying to get it dark, if it's too light, you just have to wipe it out because it's very hard to do that. So we can see that. This door has a little cyan in it, mixing a little blue into my light mixture to then scumble with the palette knife a little blue into this color. Kind of liking it. Now I'm going to get the rim lighting on the hay bales. Testing it where it's most important, right against a little bit there. Oh yeah, I like that. And you can finesse these lines with a brush later. I don't want to kill the energy. I mean, I can get in here and get super rendering, but I'm trying to find a freedom of mark making that is suggestive of the reality I'm viewing. Clean up some edges. Just try to get some different marks on there. Build up some interesting layers. A little too dark. It'll mix a little bit with what's there. A little darker under the... And sometimes you can make a color look richer or lighter by surrounding. Like when I get a dark, little bit darker under the eave of the roof there, you can see how that made the roof color stand out a bit. So I have at least 3 values in the hay bales. So this technique really kind of makes you stay away from detail in a way. And then it just kind of flows off your brush. See that? And in key areas, I'm going to just try to not go too crazy. Pick up more paint. Whoops, bumped the camera. There we go. Just trying to, and you can touch that with your brush. And I'm turning my brush. I keep what do you call it? Going over the previous layers, knowing that they're a little damp, obviously, that it will help me lighten the color without having to add some white in there because it already has the tones in there. Okay, get some dark accents in the snow bales a little more. Trying to turn my brush, plant, pick up more paint, plant, maybe even do that. I don't want that white of the canvas distracting. I mean, I kind of toned the canvas, but not a whole lot. And right along the edge, I've taken a little bit of white and blue, and because it's kind of late in the day and it's not going to be strong edges necessarily. So, and this is what we're shaping up with. So, see what we look like. I'm going to down here make a mark. Now I'm going to mark, I'm going to try to be decisive. This wobbly paint right there would not be like that in real life, even though I'm not trying to make an exact copy here, but you want to look somewhat believable. So cut, clean it up. You can still use some paint on the back side. Clean it up. Clean it up. And I might do a 1.5 inch mark, then a 1/2 inch mark, then a 1/4 inch mark, and then a long mark. So that's how you can get some energy into the piece. Yeah, I'm liking a couple things. Working with the process of the liquid impasto gel and working on the oil ground. Loving this. Where I feel there might be too much of an edge, I knock it down. You also don't want, like I don't want a mosaic of, oh, look at all these brush marks, but you want to give some vitality. You want to watch high ridges in just a couple spots because that'll be distracting unless the whole painting is similar with that result. I'm going to take the camera off now real quick. Give you a, see if I can get a close view with this Canon ELPH here. And then we'll work on a little bit in here showing the planes of light and dark better. Okay, I'm going to see how we do. I'm going to move the camera around, see if I can catch the light and you see the marks. Doesn't seem to be picking up as well as I would like. Seems very light in this light here. Clean up here. Do something there. Cut around there. Okay, too much light colored tone paint in there. Clean that out. Gotta watch that. Really trying not to go overboard with killing my original finger painting. Roof line. May not be the most perfect, but again, this whole exercise is, of course, for you guys for showing what can be done, different mark making. Kind of get an idea. I'm going to go ahead and end it just to give it, try to give you a sense of what it is behind there. It's a difficult angle I chose to put in there. I actually might take that out. I think I'm going to go ahead and take that out. And even though this is an exercise, that's something I mean, it's just too awkward. Not enough. And this is how you can do that. Just wipe out, wipe out. Trying to maintain sort of a sunlit side. Cut that. Hint of a window there. Get a little more warm tone into that blue with this sienna. just a hint more. There we go. Maybe there's a bigger window here. Angularity issues with one little thing here. Even though we want a little freedom to the piece, you can't have anything too wonky, so this here needs to kind of come down like that. So you get the idea of what we're talking about for this little exercise, and a lot of fun. I'm just going to go ahead and do a couple details on the windows themselves, just some hint of some window panes, that sort of window panes. The mullions on the window, not making the windows too complicated. Cleaning up this window a bit. Trying to get a little bit of perspective lines, don't forget. I gotta get away from you a little bit. Clean up those lines just a tad, which means I have to clean up the cut shadow line I just did because it's crooked. Okay, I've turned off one of the lights in the studio so you can hopefully see. There might be a little glare in the paint. It's hard for me to tell in the camera here. It looks like there is, but try to get it from a different angle. There's a uniform ridges on some of the paint layers. There are not any that are standing out. If there were, just hold it up at an angle to light source and you can see the ridges that are sticking up too much, and those you'd want to knock down a bit. But in case you were letting this layer dry and then working on it again, but I like this effect of starting with like a finger painting. Outdoors might be useful for certain situations such as a bog or something, a lot of intertwined laces of tree limbs and that sort of thing, and then get suggestion of curling limbs and then cut in with your brush later, that sort of thing. So a lot of fun, and hope something in this helped you, but kind of happy with the result. Just a quickie little thing. I think maybe an hour altogether. Alright everybody, this concludes this painting demo here with finger painting. Starting with finger painting and a little palette knife and brush work. And I want to thank you for joining me. Don't forget to subscribe, and also don't forget to, when you do subscribe, to go to your settings and turn on your notifications so you get alerted to when I post a new video. And please check out the Patreon link in the description box below. Until next time, bye.